Well, I hope you're having a good start to your weekend, Central Georgia. Thanks for tuning in here for a look at your extended forecast. Going to do a bit of a different format than what we typically do here on Fridays. I typically like to give you some event-specific forecasts, kind of preview any weekend plans with you. But with some active weather currently in the picture as of Friday and our weather impact alert as we go into your Saturday, we do have a lot to talk about with your short-term forecast. So we're going to go ahead and break down what you need to know. So here's going to be your satellite and radar image. And if you're watching a replay of this is obviously going to be outdated. But what I want to go ahead and do is talk about what we're seeing, because there is a non-zero severe weather risk for today, even though we're not outlined in any form of an SPC outlook. But we do have some parameters that do exist there for maybe some potential rotation, maybe some gusty winds. And right now, what we are continuing to see is our frontal boundary push in, this initial push in real time. Right now, it's mainly a narrow band of some heavy showers, and it does look like it's as far up to the northeast as areas like, say, Washington and Hancock counties. We'll go ahead and drag it up here. We can see some lighter showers over on the eastern edge of Hancock County, some pockets of yellow, orange, maybe even some red over around Sandersville to the southwest of Sandersville over in the western edge of Washington County. We take it back over to Wilkinson County and all around the Irwinton area, this line beginning to push through. And overall, it's just a very thin band of some heavy rain. It's only going to last about 5 to 10 minutes. We actually saw it come through the downtown Macon area not too long ago, and that's about all it was. For about 5 to 10 minutes, you are getting some heavy showers. You might notice the winds pick up a little bit, and then after that, you are going to begin to clear out pretty steadily. And then we can continue to see this line connect down in the southern end of Bibb County. Looks like some pockets of some heavier rain getting ready to push into northern Houston County and the Warner Robins area. And then this line kind of breaks apart a little bit as you go across areas like northern Peach County, the Byron area, all the way down to the north of Fort Valley, over into Crawford County right now. Some of these reds, once again, some heavier rainfall rates. And then going down to Butler, to the southeast of Butler, around Rupert, that's where we're also seeing some pockets of some rain once again. But we'll zoom out and take a big picture view. There are a few pop-up showers ahead of this initial line, like what you see between Dexter and Cadwell, and then up here in the northeastern corner of Lawrence County, directly south of Wrightsville, just across the Johnson County line right there. So that's what we're going to continue to be dealing with over the course of today. Obviously, the front has made pretty good progress through, but it is looking to stall eventually as we go farther into the afternoon. And that's going to kind of create on and off pop-up shower, maybe even some low-end storm chances. But I do want to take it over to the base velocity right now, where earlier we were seeing maybe a couple of kinks indicating some very broad and weak rotation. We're not seeing any of that as of right now. We can continue to see plenty of straight line winds ahead of this line. And then we'll go ahead and talk about the storm relative velocity. It doesn't look like we're getting any indications of anything in the form of that. So overall, I have been in talks with the National Weather Service so far this morning, and we are looking at maybe about a less than a 5% chance that we are going to see anything pop up in the way of severe weather. But there is still a chance, and we did have some very broad rotation and some weak rotation earlier this morning. One area up in Pike County, just to the north of Upson County, and another up here across Jasper, Putnam, and into Hancock County. So we'll continue to keep a very close eye on this line of rain as it does continue to push through. But as it does come into central Georgia, the two things that it is bringing right now are some pockets of some heavy showers and some gusty winds within that core of heaviest rainfall. And this is kind of a precursor about what is looking to be a pretty active weekend forecast. So we do have a weather impact alert in place for not your Friday, but it is going to be your Saturday from the noon window to 7 p.m. Right now, we're kind of doing some tinkering with the timing. We might actually move that window up a little bit into the late morning hours, and this would subside a little bit earlier into the afternoon and into the evening if it is to move in a little bit earlier. So here's a look at your impact. Possible strong to severe storms, which the chance of that a lot greater tomorrow as compared to what we do have for your Friday. Gusty winds, frequent lightning, and of course your subsequent thunder that follows after lightning, and even the possibility of a brief spin-up tornado. Go ahead and get used to us saying that language. Just because we say the word tornado does not mean that there is going to be a very great risk for it. However, when we talk about that possible spin-up tornado, we're talking about on the ground for a little bit of time. Those areas of rotation that we do monitor, and they're typically not very long-lasting, long-track tornadoes whatsoever. They might stir up a couple of things, knock down a couple of trees, some structures that aren't necessarily built too well. They might cause some damage too. Overall, this is going to be a risk with just about each and every severe weather system that we do see over the next couple of months. So I don't want that word tornado to necessarily catch you off guard. That is always going to be a risk when we go into our severe weather season. So what you need to do, just given the timing of this kind of being smack dab in the middle of the day on Saturday, I want you to, number one, stay weather aware over the course of your Saturday, especially if you have any outdoor plans. You might want to go ahead and make sure that you have a backup plan to go indoors if you are to notice things get a bit loud and a bit messy outside. Make sure that you have your phone handy. You have a way to receive anything in the way of warnings. And if you do get something in the way of a warning, of course, we are going to be here on 13 WMAZ Plus. We will be cutting into air if you do see anything in the way of a tornado warning throughout your Saturday afternoon. We'll have you covered for everything that you need to know if there is severe weather, but emphasis on the word possible. It's still a low-end severe weather chance. However, what we are seeing is a very warm and a very humid air mass, actually unseasonably warm for this time of year in late February. So that's why I do think we have a little bit of a better chance of maybe seeing a strong or even a severe thunderstorm warning compared to the last couple of mornings. And just given the timing of this is probably going to interrupt many plans that you have over the course of this weekend. And we just want you to stay aware when weather is impacting your daily routine. So first things first, I did mention it is very, very warm as of right now. Take a look at this, your warmest morning low temperatures. So we're not talking about record-breaking morning lows in the form of cold temperatures like we should be in the month of February, but what we have been talking about is very, very warm numbers. The record for Thursday morning, 61 degrees. That is the warmest the morning low temperature has ever been, and that was set back 8 years ago in 2018. We beat that record with a recorded low of 63 degrees yesterday morning. But how about Friday morning? This past morning, 61 degrees was also the record. It was set back in 1961, very appropriately so right there. We shattered that record. 69 degrees is as low as the temperatures did get for your Friday morning. Most areas did not get below the 70-degree mark. It was a very warm and a noticeably humid start to the day. So obviously we are definitely seeing a bit of a head start in terms of warming up into the afternoon. But we are seeing a little bit of a warm up into the afternoon, even after these very warm starts to the day. 82, that was the record high temperature for Thursday afternoon, set back in 1956. We'll now go ahead and add 2026 to that tally, coming about 70 years exactly after that date that we did record 82 in the afternoon. We did record 82 yesterday at Middle Georgia Regional Airport, and the record for Friday afternoon does stand at 80 degrees, set back in 1991. 78 is what I have in the forecast, but we'll talk about why some areas have the potential to reach the 80s and why some areas don't necessarily have that potential throughout the rest of today. So let's take a look at your surface map. Here comes our frontal boundary. It is moving into the state of Georgia rather quickly. However, it is going to stay put kind of in this position, draped across central Georgia throughout the next couple of hours, really going into the afternoon, going all the way into your Saturday night before finally clearing, I think, sometime early on Sunday morning. But it's all attached to this low pressure center, which is up there pretty close to the Chicago area, maybe on the other side of Lake Michigan, over on the western side of the state of Michigan. But we can see that this front is draped down on the southern end of it, and it's also occluded up here, which means it's caught up to the warm front that was once present attached to this low pressure center. But nonetheless, this cold front will be what's impacting us, and I do imagine that this low pressure center, it's going to kind of hang out around the Great Lakes portion of the country over the next couple of days, and that's what's going to contribute to the cold front also staying put down here across the southeast. So here's a look at future view as we go into the rest of this afternoon and into the evening. This is 4 p.m. as you're probably winding down from a long day at work, long work week at work. Well, hopefully it wasn't too long. I mean, a lot of you probably had Monday off of work, and I know some kids even had Tuesday off of school. So it's a shortened work week, but nonetheless ready to get back into another weekend. And I would go ahead and plan on and off showers, maybe even a few pockets where you do hear some rumbles of thunder. There is a non-zero chance of maybe even a stronger to a severe thunderstorm later on today, and I think that's mainly going to be in areas that heat up a little bit more than the rest of the bunch. Take a look at what we do see as we go into 7 p.m. In fact, actually, I'll just drag it back here because there is one thing I do want to emphasize. This afternoon into the evening, it's going to be a good mix of sunshine, of some cloudy skies, and a rainy atmosphere in some areas. So it is going to be a different forecast depending on where you're heading out the door to, and you're going to really want to continue to play it by ear. But say we're nice and sunny and we haven't seen really anything in the way of rain, that's going to continue to contribute to some surface heating. And I do believe the warmer that you get, that is going to start to create a more ripe environment for maybe something in the way of some potential strong weather like we have seen a little bit so far this morning with some gusty winds. Going into 7 p.m., still scattered showers, maybe a few pockets of some heavier rain, and then we can continue to maybe even see a couple of dark red areas pop. I'm going to go ahead and drag it back to this because I did just see a flash of what I thought was maybe even a very dark red shade. Really hard to pick apart specifically, but nonetheless, rain chances will continue to be on and off throughout your Friday night plans. So make sure that you just have the rain jacket, the umbrella ready to go. I promise it is going to be a choice that you are going to be glad that you made, especially if you do come across one of these scattered showers into the evening. Now let's go into your Saturday morning, where once again spotty light rain is popping up in the picture, and then our frontal boundary, which does drive in as of right now. It is currently moving through central Georgia. I mentioned it's going to park itself, it's going to stall. It does look like it might sag back up to the north just a little bit before pushing back down into central Georgia. This is 10 a.m. where we start to see the rain organize ahead of this frontal boundary, getting ready to move back in. And then starting in the late morning to around lunchtime period, that's when we have the potential for maybe even some strong to severe storms to begin to fire up ahead of this frontal boundary, kicking back into motion and still interacting with our very warm and our very humid air mass that is in place. So that's where you will start to see some pockets of the maroon, the dark red colors, and these isolated pockets are going to indicate where the core of a severe thunderstorm could pop up. And within this severe thunderstorm, we are going to continue to look out for signs of possible rotation. But now that we are seeing future view trend towards an earlier entrance, maybe towards around 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., it does look like it is making an earlier exit. So this is 4 p.m., still a couple of rain showers lingering in our southernmost counties. Then by about 6 p.m., I think most of this is already completely out of the picture, but the rain chances are not done, even as we go into the nighttime hours. So you are going to continue to want to have the rain gear ready to go even into your Saturday night plans, but the severe weather threat is going to end as we go into Saturday night and we lose that daytime heating courtesy of the sunshine. We will have showers overnight into early on Sunday morning, and then we're actually going to spot all of the clouds and eventually all of this moisture in the form of some scattered light rain eventually get out of the picture, and we will be nice and clear by about the 9 a.m. hour on Sunday morning. But note these wind arrows. It is going to be a gusty into your weekend, and these wind arrows will also be paired up with some declining temperatures as we go into the end of the weekend. So that's where we will turn our focus to after we get through the potential severe weather threat. And there's really no talking points with your Sunday forecast. It's going to be full of nothing but almost entirely sunshine. So day 2 storm outlook. The potential threats that we're looking out for are essentially a strong to maybe even severe storm or two. And within that, the main impacts that you're going to continue to see are isolated heavy downpours. You're going to see some gusty and damaging winds, probably in around the 40 to the 60 mile per hour range, frequent lightning, and of course, a couple rumbles of thunder, especially in those areas that do have a lot of clusters of lightning bunching up together. We even have the possibility of maybe some small to medium-sized hail, really looking at maybe about penny to dime-sized hail, but some isolated pockets could see some hail a little bit larger than that. But the hail risk is going to be relatively low, just like that brief spin-up tornado risk. But it is non-zero, and it is something we want you to stay informed about. This does not guarantee that we are going to see a tornado-warned storm. This does not even guarantee that we will see anything in the way of a severe thunderstorm warning. But given that we are so warm and so humid for this time of year at the end of February, and with the timing of this being during your Saturday afternoon plans, it is something we want you to be aware of because it could be impacting any plans that you did have as you go outdoors. So that hence your weather impact alert. We didn't have one for today because the severe weather chances are almost relatively zero. I did mention there's a very small chance of that. We'll continue to keep a close eye on it, but the moral of the story, both Friday, both Saturday, have a way to receive those warnings and be prepared to make a contingency plan. Have a backup plan for anything that you do have outdoors if it does get loud and messy outside. But otherwise, continue about your plans. We're not telling you to cancel anything. Just play it by ear. Take a look at our live radar stream. Take a look at the radar app that you do have on your phone. We're not wanting you to cancel anything in the way of weekend plans because it very well may be dry, and the severe weather risk, it is going to end in areas farther to the north a little bit earlier into Saturday afternoon as opposed to farther down to the south. But still going to be a warm afternoon tomorrow morning, and then we get into Sunday, and that's where we really start to notice the difference in the temperatures. 40 degrees to start out the morning. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw a couple upper 30s, and then 60 degrees for a high temperature. Wouldn't be surprised if we were somewhere in the 50s throughout your Sunday afternoon. But this isn't at all the worst thing in the world. Take a look at some of your rainfall totals that we are looking to see over the course of this weekend. I'm seeing a lot of totals above 1 inch, maybe even up to about 1.5 inches, maybe even some isolated pockets of 2 to 3 inches of rain. So this would definitely be very substantial, especially if this were to pop up in this specific location. Now, this doesn't mean that Soperton is going to get 2.3 inches of rain. We would be hoping that that would be the case because take a look at your drought monitor, where now with the latest update this past week, southeast central Georgia is found in an extreme drought. We also see another patch of an extreme drought moving in to our westernmost counties over there in Upson, Crawford, Taylor counties, portions of Lamar and Monroe counties. For the most part, you are very likely in the orange shade like Macon, Warner Robins, Perry, portions of Dublin, getting over into Twiggs County, maybe down into Macon County. That's where a severe drought exists, which still means that you need your fair share of rain, just not quite as much as these areas that are in an extreme drought. And then, of course, we have one step down below the severe drought. That's going to be your moderate drought. So areas like Milledgeville, up in Gray, you guys don't need the rain as much as areas farther down to the south here in central Georgia, or the northern half of our northernmost counties like Jasper, Putnam, and Hancock counties. Promise I didn't forget about you guys. You guys are also outlined in that severe drought, not necessarily the moderate drought like areas of the southern portions of those counties do exist in. So we are definitely going to utilize and be very thankful for whatever we get in the way of rain. And there is one more aspect of your forecast. Number one, that is going to be the winds, which do look like they subside, except in our southernmost counties throughout the evening hours for your Friday. So this means that our frontal boundary is looking to stall somewhere in south central Georgia, and then we are going to see the breezy conditions build back up to the north just a little bit. Still the potential for some isolated gusts. I think they get higher than the numbers that you do see here, especially if we pop up a severe thunderstorm or just even a strong thunderstorm in the way of a special weather statement. We could have some winds maybe up to 50 to 60 miles per hour, but that would be in a select few isolated spots. Not going to be widespread, and typically our future view wind gust map doesn't necessarily pick up on that, but we can see maybe some shades of pink here just to the north of Albany, to the west of Cordele, and that would be indicative of some far gustier winds up to 40, 50, or 60 miles per hour. But then we go into Sunday, and the winds aren't looking to just be a tad bit breezy, or it's not just looking to be one of those windier days than normal. It's actually going to be very gusty. How about this? Widespread pink building in. I imagine if we do go along this route, we are going to see a wind advisory for your Sunday afternoon with some gusts up to 35, maybe potentially even 40 miles per hour. That would definitely be enough to warrant a wind advisory, which just means it is going to be a very, very windy day and a very, very windy end to your weekend. So if you have anything that blows around, loose items outside, maybe you have the pool net that does like to blow around whenever you get the winds to pick up. If you're like myself, you notice the umbrellas in the backyard, those always blow over during a very windy day. You're going to want to secure those items as you go into your Sunday afternoon. Or maybe even if you have a big St. Patrick's Day leprechaun, a blow up in the front yard, you're going to want to secure him just like you would with your blow up Santa Clauses and your Rudolph that you do see in December. And even as we go overnight Sunday into Monday, we're still holding on to some breezy conditions. And as we go into Monday morning, this breeze is going to result in some pretty frigid feels-like temperatures as you walk out the door next Monday morning. It is going to feel nowhere near as pleasant and nowhere near as nice as it did this past Friday morning, where we did have temperatures in the 70s and we even had a noticeable humidity in the forecast. So this graphic tells the real story about what happens with that front. It drives through areas in northern Georgia. They have a much drier atmosphere than we do down in central Georgia, but then eventually, after meandering for about a period of 24 hours, front kicks back into gear as we go into early Sunday morning, and then we're left with absolutely nothing in the way of a humid atmosphere as we go into the beginning of next week. So long range models, Monday at 5 p.m., nice and clear. Tuesday, maybe starting to see some clouds creep back in the forecast. Wednesday looking like a partly cloudy day. And then as we go into Thursday, here comes our next weather maker. Now, it does look like pretty good agreement this far out. And I mean, we're about 6 days out right now and still seeing that the GFS and the Euro agreeing generally that something might happen in the form of some widespread rain as we go into the second half of Thursday. Obviously, this is still too far out to fine-tune anything in the way of severe weather parameters. We haven't had anything outlined as of that. But the important thing to note with this is if we do have anything in the way of a potential severe weather risk with this next frontal boundary, it's happening finally during a weekday, not during a weekend. And what that means is we are going to start to see that clear out as we go into next Friday. And eventually, hopefully, we can go into next weekend. That front passes through and we can finally have a quiet Friday, Saturday, and Sunday forecast. Over the past month, maybe even month and a half, really since we started the new year, I think we've only had about 1 or 2 maybe calm weekend forecasts, and one of those was the Super Bowl weekend most recently. But Valentine's Day, we had that severe weather risk as of last Sunday, and then we had those 3 consecutive weekends with a winter weather risk back into the back half of January. So we will be thankful for whatever break from the active weather that we could receive. But in terms of this next frontal boundary, just going ahead and looking way ahead, maybe even some more totals up to about an inch, inch and a half, or 2 inches. That looks pretty promising this far out. European model is pretty much reciprocating that idea. In fact, when you add in the totals from this weekend and going into next week, it does look like we could also see those isolated pockets of 2 to maybe even 3 inches where you start to get into more of that brown kind of reddish shade that is mainly present to the north of Columbus. But hey, we can use whatever we need in the way of substantial rainmakers. We are somewhere in the neighborhood around 3.5 inches below where we should be at this point in 2026 for our rainfall. So for your morning low temperatures, 27 degrees on Monday. I mentioned we're going to have some breezy conditions, so 27 is very likely to feel like the upper teens. So we are definitely going to get another taste of, or really another feel rather, I should say, of what it does feel like in the winter time frame. 24, that's going to be the lowest that we go for your morning low temperatures, and still pretty chilly on Wednesday morning, but finally seeing a bump up back above average as we go into Thursday morning. And I think that's attributed to having more cloud cover in the forecast, helping keep those numbers a little bit warmer. Afternoon highs, if we keep the breeze in the forecast throughout Monday afternoon, 48 is very likely going to feel closer to 40. Maybe even the upper 30s. So like I mentioned, the beginning of next week feeling entirely different than what we have been feeling like as of recently. Another reminder that it is winter, so make sure that you make plans towards the end of the weekend to go ahead and break back out that heavy layering, that heavy winter coat, because you are very likely going to need it on Monday morning, Tuesday morning, maybe not necessarily as you get into Tuesday afternoon, but we are pretty quick to warm up back into the mid 60s and into the upper 60s to where we should be back above average for your high temperatures as we go into Thursday. And it looks like this is just going to be the beginning of another warm stretch of weather, where right now for the outlined time period of February 27th, which I believe is going to be as of next Friday all the way into the following Thursday, which is so hard to believe that it's already going to be the month of March. We are having a pretty good chance of having above normal numbers. In fact, 1, 2, 3, kind of in between 3 and 4 boxes over to the right. I imagine this is going to be a greater than 50% chance of seeing some above average numbers. And right now, your averages sit at, I believe it is 65 degrees is what we just saw for that average high. Your average low sits around 40 degrees. By the end of the month, they are going to be at 67 degrees. And it is going to be at 42 degrees. And then we'll go into the month of March, and those numbers are very likely going to increase probably about a degree or 2 each and every week as we get into the springtime kind of feel for the temperatures. March really marks the beginning of meteorological spring, but we officially don't kick it off for more than likely another 30 days or so. Actually, we'll talk specifically about that in just a moment. But as far as your precip outlook goes for that same time period, so the second to last day of February all the way into March 5th, we do have a slight chance of above normal rainfall in northern Georgia, but not necessarily down here in central Georgia. It looks like we're going to get kind of what we typically see, a weather maker move in just about each and every week possibly. That's kind of what the time frame is going to be. Maybe 1 or 2 fronts that move through each and every week during the severe weather season. And some of those can pop up as severe weather risk. Some of those might be moving into a moisture starved atmosphere, and that would create little to no rain chances, but it will help kind of keep our temperatures in check if we do get a very warm spell of weather like we have been seeing. So things to look ahead to. Time change. Consider this your warning. You have 2 more weekends before we are going to lose an hour of sleep, and then we are going to gain those later sunrises. So the sunset is going to be somewhere around 7:37 after we make this time change and we spring forward. But of course, it does come at the cost of losing an extra hour of sleep. I know a lot of you not a big fan of this time change per se, but just consider this your warning right now. So this weekend and next weekend, as we get into the last weekend of February, are the last 2 normal weekends before you're going to have to worry about changing those clocks. St. Patrick's Day, that's going to be 9 days later, and that is going to be on March 17th, of course, but March 17th is going to be on a Tuesday. So you might make your St. Patrick's Day plans for the weekend before, which is going to run probably about 20 days away, or it could be for the weekend after, and that's going to be more so in the neighborhood of about 30 days away. So make your plans accordingly, but that is one of my favorite holidays personally of the calendar year. So 25 days away from that, very, very excited. And that's also an exciting time of the year because you get March Madness started with basketball. And I know everyone loves to fill out those brackets once you get into that time frame. First day of spring, not too long after St. Patrick's Day. In fact, that's going to be on the following Friday on March 20th, excuse me. And that might be smack dab in the middle of the first round of the NCAA tournament. So first day of spring, not too far away, folks. Really getting into the neighborhood of exactly a month away, as a matter of fact. And then we move into the month of April, and I believe it is April 5th, which is going to be the first Sunday of the month of April. That's going to be Easter Sunday. So really moving into an exciting portion of the year where the weather's getting a lot warmer. Of course, we're actually, I believe it is today, as of this Friday, which is February 20th. I've been struggling with that date all morning long. I do apologize, but I believe it is also going to be on this first day of spring on March 20th that we are going to be kickstarting the Cherry Blossom Festival here in Macon. So we are eagerly awaiting the arrival of that. A lot of exciting things this time of the year when the weather does begin to get warmer. But before we start talking about all of those exciting things, one more time, weather impact alert. That's going to be Saturday right now as it stands, noon to 7 p.m. But I think I would plan more on the window of 10 a.m. all the way until 6 p.m. in the evening. So it does look like we're going to see activity get started a little bit earlier than we were looking at as of yesterday when we made this time frame. And then it does look like activity should get out of here as we go into around 6 p.m. At least the severe weather parameters and the severe weather risk. As we go into the nighttime hours on Saturday, we will still have some scattered rain, but it's not going to be heavy and it's not going to be in the form of storms. So possible strong to the severe storms are what we're on the lookout for tomorrow afternoon and also just throughout the rest of your Friday afternoon, even though the chances are very, very minuscule. Gusty winds, frequent lightning, possible spin-up tornado, and maybe even some small hail. Those are all the possible impacts that we could see. Is this a guarantee that we see all of these? Absolutely not, but this is something we will be on the lookout for and that we do have the risk for. So stay weather aware during the day. Like I said, have a way to receive warnings on your cellular device. Continue about your plans as usual, but make sure that you're playing it by ear. You're checking in with the radar. You're checking in to see if you get any warnings. And if we do get anything in the way of warnings, we'll be keeping you updated here on 13 WMAZ. So normally I wrap it up and kind of wish you well for the weekend, but I do want to leave you with one last look at that current satellite and radar image as of this Friday. Again, this is kind of a precursor for what's to come. This is a very promising sign to see this line beginning to break apart as it moves across central Georgia, but still some pockets of some heavy rain and some gusty winds. Make sure that you're driving very carefully through these areas of some heavier showers, really limiting your visibility, or pull over for a brief moment if you have to. But now I will bid you farewell. I hope you have a spectacular weekend. Again, stay updated with us. Make sure that you are playing it by ear for any outdoor plans that you have. And you do have plans to go inside if it gets a little bit loud and messy outside. But I'm not telling you to cancel those plans. That weather impact alert is simply just trying to make sure that you're paying attention to the forecast throughout tomorrow, because we have the potential for severe weather, and we are going to have that potential a lot more frequently as we are really heading into the beginning of our severe weather season. But otherwise, hope you have some safe plans and I hope you have a fun weekend ahead. And we will see you back here at Monday at 11 a.m. But also we will see you here on 13 WMAZ Plus if you are to get a warning tomorrow and you need to be properly informed. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you whenever we see you.